The Galactic Council chamber was filled with the quiet hum of alien voices, discussing matters of war, trade, and politics. Among them sat Supreme Chancellor Valon, a towering figure with cold, calculating eyes. He was surrounded by representatives of the most powerful alien species in the known universe. Today, however, they had a special prisoner, one they thought was nothing more than an insignificant human. Emma Carter stood in the center of the room, her hands bound by energy restraints. She looked calm, too calm for someone standing before the most feared governing body in the galaxy. Her brown hair was slightly disheveled. Her clothes bore signs of struggle, but her green eyes burned with a quiet defiance. The guards on either side of her stood rigid, their reptilian features tense, as if they expected her to lash out at any moment. A Xalothian judge stepped forward, its many eyes blinking in sequence as it unrolled a long parchment. Emma Carter, citizen of the Terran Republic, you are charged with acts of rebellion, conspiracy against the Council, and the illegal smuggling of restricted technology. Its voice was smooth, emotionless. Do you deny these accusations? Emma tilted her head slightly. I don't even know what you're talking about. Murmurs spread across the chamber. The Council was not used to defiance from prisoners, especially humans. Most broke down in fear, begged for mercy. But Emma Carter stood firm, unshaken by the weight of the room pressing down on her. Chancellor Valon leaned forward, his deep voice carrying an edge of amusement. Your defiance is admirable, but pointless. We have evidence. You were found in possession of Council-forbidden technology. That alone is a crime punishable by death. Emma's lips twitched, almost into a smirk. You really don't know who I am, do you? The Chancellor chuckled, shaking his head. You are just another human. Your people think they are strong, but they are still new to the galactic stage. You are nothing. Emma let out a slow breath and glanced around at the towering alien figures surrounding her. Some looked at her with amusement, others with disinterest. But a few had started shifting uncomfortably. Their eyes darted toward one another, silent but full of unease. A Krell warrior, his thick armor plates gleaming under the chamber's golden lights, leaned toward his neighbor, a slender, bird-like saurian. Did she say, Carter? The saurian's feathers ruffled slightly as he nodded. Yes, I think she did. Another alien, a broad-shouldered Vorton, suddenly went stiff. His massive clawed hands clenched as a shiver ran through him. He opened his mouth, as if to say something, then shut it again. The Chancellor did not notice the reaction from the few who understood the danger. He was too busy preparing his speech, ready to declare another human as an example to the rest of their species. Your trial is merely a formality, he continued. You will be. A small, nervous voice interrupted him. Chancellor, I think we should verify something first. The room turned toward the source. It was an Ithari, a smaller, jellyfish-like species known for their information networks. The Ithari delegate's many translucent tendrils pulsed with a strange energy. She said her name is Carter. If that means what I think it means, we might be making a grave mistake. The Chancellor frowned. Explain. The Ithari hesitated, but then took a deep breath. There is a name, one that echoes across battlefields and war records. A name that entire fleets fear. If this human is connected to him, then we must tread carefully. Emma finally smiled, her eyes gleaming with something dangerous. Took you long enough. Silence filled the chamber. Some council members looked confused. Others, however, had gone pale. The Krell warrior's claws twitched nervously. The Saurian delegate was gripping the edge of his seat so tightly that his talons dug into the metal. The Chancellor's patience wore thin. Who are you talking about? The Ithari turned, its glowing blue eyes wide with what could only be described as horror. James Carter. The name sent a ripple through the chamber. It was like a cold wind had blown through the room, chilling everyone who understood the weight behind it. A deep hush fell over the council as many exchanged uneasy glances. The Saurian delegate swallowed hard. James Carter, the butcher of Vandrex 9. The man who destroyed an entire war fleet alone. Emma raised an eyebrow. Oh, you do remember. The Krell warrior growled, his voice now trembling with fear. He's supposed to be dead. He disappeared years ago. Emma shrugged. You really think someone like him just disappears? A loud buzzing filled the chamber as more and more council members whispered among themselves. There were countless stories about James Carter, a man who had once been a soldier, then a legend, and finally a ghost. Some claimed he had wiped out entire mercenary clans on his own. Others said he had once held off an entire invasion fleet with nothing but a single warship and a plan. No one knew the truth, but one thing was certain. His name alone was enough to send a chill down the spines of even the most hardened warriors. The Chancellor clenched his jaw, refusing to be intimidated. Even if this human is related to Carter, he has been gone for years. He is no threat to us now. Emma laughed softly, shaking her head. You really think he won't come for me? The Krell warrior took a step back, his massive frame suddenly looking much smaller. If he is alive. If he finds out we have her. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. A sharp beep echoed through the chamber. One of the council's communication officers hurried forward, his insectoid limbs shaking. Supreme Chancellor, we just received an urgent transmission from an unknown source. The Chancellor frowned. Put it through. The massive holoscreen above the chamber flickered to life. Static crackled for a moment before a deep, steady voice filled the room. Release my wife, or I will come for you. The chamber went dead silent. No one moved. No one breathed. The Chancellor's hands gripped the edges of his throne-like seat. Who is this? The voice remained calm, but there was an unmistakable weight behind every word. You already know who I am. The screen cut out. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, Emma leaned forward, looking directly into the Chancellor's eyes. Now do you understand? The room remained frozen in shock, but outside the council chamber, across the vast reaches of space, the whispers had already begun. James Carter had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The council chamber remained silent long after the transmission had ended. The alien leaders sat frozen, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outright terror. The name James Carter carried a weight few dared to ignore. Chancellor Valen clenched his fists. He refused to believe it. James Carter was a ghost, a myth used to scare mercenaries and warlords. He had vanished years ago. There was no way he was still alive. But deep down, a sliver of doubt crept into his mind. Emma Carter, still standing in the center of the chamber, watched their reactions with quiet amusement. She had seen this before, the moment predators realized they had cornered the wrong prey. The Athari delegate's tendrils flickered with nervous energy. If the message is real, we need to act carefully, it said, voice shaking. James Carter doesn't make threats. If he says he's coming, he is coming. The Krell warrior growled, his armored plates clicking together. We should kill her now. If he finds her alive, he will stop at nothing to get her back. Emma smirked. And if he finds out you executed me, what do you think will happen then? The Krell fell silent, his eyes narrowing. He had fought countless battles, survived wars that left entire planets in ruins. But the thought of facing James Carter sent a chill down his spine. Chancellor Valen took a deep breath, regaining his composure. He would not let fear control him. He turned to the communication officer. Trace the signal. Find out where it came from. The insectoid officer hesitated. We already tried. Supreme Chancellor. The transmission was encrypted with a high-level military algorithm. We can't locate the source. Valen's frown deepened, then increased security. Mobilize the fleet. If this human is truly coming, we will be ready for him. Emma laughed softly, shaking her head. You really think you can stop him? Valen's gaze snapped to her, his patience wearing thin. You act as if he is some kind of god. He is just a man. No man can stand against the might of the council. Emma's green eyes locked onto his. Then why are you afraid? Valon stiffened, but before he could respond, another transmission alert blared through the chamber. The communication officer's eyes widened. Another message, sir. But this time, it's not a voice transmission. The holoscreen above flickered to life again. This time, there were no words, just an image. A council warship, one of the largest in their fleet, drifting through space, completely destroyed. Its hull was torn open, debris floating lifelessly around it. The lights were out. The weapons were silent. The once mighty battleship was nothing more than a broken corpse in the void. Gasps filled the chamber. The Ithari delegate's tendrils curled in horror. That's the Vanguard. It was stationed at the edge of council space. That ship had thousands of crew members on board. The Krell warrior bared his fangs. No fleet was reported in that sector. No battles were fought. How? How did this happen? Emma tilted her head. You already know. The screen flickered again. This time, a single message appeared in bold red letters. One warning. Let her go. Silence. Cold, suffocating silence. The Saurian delegate stood abruptly, his talons scraping against the metal floor. We need to run. If he could destroy a battleship without detection, he could be anywhere. He could already be here. The Krell warrior slammed his fist against the table. Coward, we do not run. The Ithari delegate trembled. Maybe you don't, but I refuse to be here when James Carter arrives. Valon's mind raced. How? How had this happened? No ship could breach council security so easily. No fleet could take down one of their most powerful warships without triggering alarms. Unless they never saw him coming. The Chancellor turned to the guards. Take her back to her cell. No harm is to come to her. Not until I decide what to do. The guards hesitated but obeyed, gripping Emma's arms and leading her away. As she walked past Valon, she leaned in slightly. He's already here. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of certainty. Valon's blood ran cold. Somewhere out in the void, James Carter was moving. And the hunt had begun. Deep within the high-security prison wing of the Council's capital station, Emma Carter sat in her cell, her hands resting calmly on her lap. The energy restraints that bound her wrists were top-tier, designed to hold even the strongest warriors in the galaxy. But she wasn't worried. Her husband was coming. Outside her cell, the guards were restless. They had seen the transmission, seen the image of the Vanguard reduced to scrap. The station's security level had been raised to maximum. Warships were patrolling the system, and every entrance was being monitored. None of them felt safe. In the main war room, Chancellor Valon stood before a massive holotable, watching real-time reports from across council space. The fleet was mobilizing, ready for war. Every sensor was scanning for any sign of James Carter. But there was nothing. The Ithari delegate's tendrils twitched nervously. He's not attacking directly. He's waiting, watching. The Krell warrior growled. He is hiding like a coward. The Ithari turned its glowing blue eyes toward him. Does a coward destroy a warship without warning? Does a coward send a message that shakes the entire council? The Krell said nothing. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the station. The holoscreen flickered with red warning lights. A security officer rushed in, panic in his eyes. Sir, we have a breach. Valon's eyes narrowed. Where? The officer swallowed hard. It's not an external attack. It's inside the station. For the first time, true fear settled over the council leaders. Valon turned sharply. Impossible. No ship has entered the system. No one has docked. The officer hesitated. We don't know how, but the lower decks are going dark. Cameras are shutting off. Guards are disappearing. We have no visual on the intruder. The Krell warrior's claws twitched. He's here. The holoscreen updated, showing a map of the station. Red warning symbols flashed in a direct path, one after another, heading toward the prison wing, the Etheri whispered. Valen's hands clenched into fists. All forces, to the detention block. I want every available soldier there now. But deep down, he already knew it wouldn't be enough. Inside her cell, Emma heard the distant sound of alarms, the frantic voices of guards shouting orders. She closed her eyes and smiled. Then the lights in the hallway outside her cell flickered. A second later, they went completely dark. The guards cursed, gripping their weapons tightly. Their eyes darted in every direction. One of them activated a wrist light, casting a dim glow against the metallic walls. Something moved in the shadows. The nearest guard barely had time to react before a gloved hand shot out of the darkness, gripping his throat. There was no sound, no struggle, just a sharp twist. His body crumpled to the floor. The second guard swung his rifle toward the movement, but the shadows swallowed him before he could fire. A low, choking gasp escaped his lips before he too went silent. The emergency backup lights flickered back on, revealing a single figure standing in the hallway. James Carter. His face was partially hidden under a tactical hood, his piercing blue eyes locked onto the energy-reinforced door of Emma's cell. His body was clad in a dark, armored suit, sleek, deadly, and built for war. In his hands, he held a compact pulse rifle, still humming softly from recent use. Emma exhaled slowly. You took your time. James smirked. Had to make an entrance. He raised his weapon and fired a single shot at the control panel beside her cell. Sparks erupted, and the energy field flickered before vanishing completely. Emma stood up, stepping forward as James held out a hand. She took it without hesitation. The reunion lasted only a second. A thunderous explosion rocked the station as the sound of approaching boots filled the corridor. The Council's elite soldiers were coming. James turned, raising his rifle. Let's go. Emma grinned. After you, love. And together, they disappeared into the chaos. The station trembled as alarms blared through the hallways. James Carter moved like a shadow, his steps silent, his pulse rifle raised and ready. Emma followed close behind, her expression calm despite the chaos unfolding around them. The Council's elite soldiers were closing in. Heavy boots echoed through the metal corridors. They were well-trained, well-armed, and determined to stop the impossible. The escape of Emma Carter and the return of James Carter. They had no idea what they were up against. James turned a corner and spotted a squad of guards setting up a defensive position ahead. Their rifles were aimed, ready to fire the moment he stepped into view. He didn't give them the chance. With precise movements, he raised his rifle and fired 2 quick shots at the overhead lights. The corridor plunged into darkness. The soldiers cursed, their night vision struggling to adjust. Then James was among them. A knife flashed in the darkness. A soldier gasped as cold steel sliced through his armor, dropping him instantly. Another tried to react, but James grabbed his rifle and twisted, using the soldier's own weapon to take him down. Emma watched from the shadows, impressed. Even after all these years, he hadn't lost his touch. A third soldier turned and shouted, "He's here. Open fire." A silenced shot cut him off. He crumpled before finishing his sentence. Emma stepped forward, shaking her head. "You really don't like to waste time, do you?" James smirked as he reloaded his weapon. Never did. They moved quickly, passing through the now silent hallway. But James knew this was only the beginning. The real challenge was reaching the hangar. Back in the war room, Chancellor Valen's hands tightened into fists. Where are they now? A tactical officer scrambled to update the holomap. They're moving toward Hangar Bay 12. We have squads intercepting, but they're losing, the Etheri delegate finished grimly. The aliens' tendrils twitched in fear. James Carter is a one-man war. He's cutting through our soldiers like they're nothing. The Krell warrior growled. Then send everything we have. Valen's expression hardened. Activate the automated turrets in the hangar. Lock the doors. I don't care what it takes. He does not leave this station alive. The orders were given. The Council's forces surged forward. James and Emma reached the final corridor leading to Hangar Bay 12. The large blast doors were shut tight. A keypad on the wall blinked red, locked down. Emma glanced at James. How long to override it? He examined the security panel. Too long. The sound of boots echoed behind them. Soldiers, many of them. Emma sighed. Then we do it the old-fashioned way. James reached into his tactical belt and pulled out a small explosive charge. He pressed it against the door's locking mechanism and activated the timer. 10 seconds. Gunfire erupted behind them. James spun, returning fire with deadly precision. Emma grabbed a fallen soldier's rifle and joined him, her shots just as accurate. 8 seconds. A Krell warrior charged forward, his thick armor absorbing their bullets. He roared, raising a massive energy blade. James shifted tactics instantly. He rolled forward, dodging the strike, and fired 3 rounds directly into the warrior's exposed neck. The Krell stumbled, gurgled, then collapsed. 5 seconds. A group of Itheri snipers took position at the far end of the hallway. Emma spotted them. Snipers, high. James didn't hesitate. He fired a single shot at a gas pipe overhead. It ruptured, spewing thick smoke into the corridor, obscuring the sniper's vision. 2 seconds. The explosion ripped through the door, sending metal shards flying. The way to the hangar was clear. James grabbed Emma's hand. Move. They sprinted inside just as automated turrets activated, swiveling toward them. Emma cursed. They're ready for us. James smirked. Let's see how ready. He raised his wrist, tapping a small device. In the darkness of space, just outside the station's defense grid, a single ship powered up. Sleek, black, and nearly undetectable, it had been waiting for this exact moment. The ship's AI registered the signal and fired. A concentrated plasma burst struck the station's external power conduit. The lights flickered. The turrets stalled. That was all the opening James needed. He and Emma sprinted toward the nearest fighter craft. James leaped into the pilot's seat while Emma took control of the weapons. The hangar doors were still locked, but that wouldn't stop them. Council forces stormed into the hangar just as James powered up the engines. Valen's furious voice echoed over the comms. Carter, you won't escape. Not this time. James's lips curled into a grin. Watch me. The fighter's thrusters roared to life, and in a single explosive burst, the ship shot forward, straight through the hangar doors, leaving fire and chaos in its wake. They were free. But the war had just begun. The Council's station shrank behind them, a burning scar against the darkness of space. Inside the stolen fighter, James Carter kept his hand steady on the controls, weaving through debris and dodging the station's desperate attempts to shoot them down. Emma sat beside him, eyes scanning the sensors. They're scrambling fighters, she said, voice calm but sharp. 12 on intercept course. James smirked. 12. That's all. Emma rolled her eyes, cocky as ever. The comm crackled to life. A deep, angry voice filled the cockpit. James Carter, surrender now. There is no escape. We have you surrounded. James didn't even look at the panel. Yeah. And who's talking? I am Admiral Theron of the Council Fleet. You will power down your vessel and prepare to be boarded. James let out a low chuckle. You might want to check your scanners again, Admiral. Theron's voice grew colder. What? A second later, a new blip appeared on the sensors. Something massive. Something waiting. From the darkness of space, the retribution decloaked. The warship was sleek, black, and utterly terrifying. Built in secret, modified by James himself, it was a ghost in the void, undetectable until it wanted to be seen. And now it was seen. A moment of silence passed before Theron's voice returned. Impossible. James grinned. Yeah, I get that a lot. The Retribution's main cannons powered up. The fighters that had been closing in hesitated, their pilots realizing, too late, that they had stepped into a trap. Emma activated the comms. "This is Emma Carter. We have no interest in prisoners. Leave now, and you live. Stay, and we burn you out of the sky." For a moment, there was nothing. Then, one by one, the Council fighters turned and fled. Theron's ship, however, remained. James sighed. Of course, there's always one idiot. The Retribution fired a single shot, a precision strike. Theron's shields flared, then collapsed. His ship's engines flickered. "Last chance," James said. There was a long pause. Then, finally, Theron's ship turned away, retreating into the void. Emma leaned back in her seat. Well, that was fun. James piloted the fighter into the hangar of the Retribution. As the ship settled, he turned to Emma, his expression serious. "We're not done yet." She nodded. "I know." As they stepped out of the fighter, the crew of the Retribution saluted. Men and women who had followed James through hell and back, soldiers who had been waiting for this moment. One of them, a tall man with a cybernetic arm, stepped forward. "Welcome back, Captain." James nodded. "Status report." The man smirked. "Fleet's ready. Weapons primed. Just say the word." Emma folded her arms. "And what's the target?" James exhaled slowly, his eyes cold and focused. "The Council took you," he said. "Now we take everything from them." The war had begun. The Retribution drifted through the void, a silent predator waiting to strike. Inside the warship, James Carter stood on the bridge, his gaze locked onto the holo display. The Council's fleet was gathering near the central stronghold. Vaskar Prime. It was the beating heart of their rule, a fortress world surrounded by orbital defenses and entire battalions of soldiers. Emma stood beside him, arms crossed. "So, what's the plan? You know we can't just charge in guns blazing." James smirked. "Why not? It worked last time." The crew chuckled, but Emma didn't smile. "That was different. This is Vaskar Prime. Even with the Retribution, we're outgunned." James turned to his cybernetic-armed second-in-command Cole. "What's the status of our allies?" Cole's mechanical fingers tapped the console. "The rebellion fleets are moving into position. We got 3 major factions ready to strike. The Council thinks they're in control, but they don't know half their forces are about to turn on them." Emma raised an eyebrow. "And the other half?" Cole sighed. "Loyal to the end. They'll fight." James nodded. "Then we make sure they don't get the chance." The plan was bold, dangerous, but it was their only shot. They weren't going to attack Vaskar Prime directly. That's what the Council expected. Instead, they would cripple the planet's defenses from the inside by taking out the primary command station orbiting the planet. And there was only one way to get inside. James turned to Emma. "We're going in quiet." She grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." The Retribution stayed hidden behind a nearby moon, while a smaller stealth shuttle detached. Inside, James, Emma, and a handful of elite operatives prepped their gear. The orbital command station was massive, heavily guarded, and packed with the Council's best officers. If they could take control, they could disable planetary defenses and allow the rebellion fleets to strike before the Council even knew what was happening. As they approached, James checked his weapon. "No alarms. No mistakes. We do this clean." Emma smirked. "When do we ever?" The shuttle docked at a maintenance port on the station's underbelly. Silent as ghosts, they moved in. The first patrol didn't even see them coming. James struck fast, taking down a guard with a swift blade to the throat. Emma neutralized another with a silenced pistol. The team spread out, disabling security systems and clearing a path. They reached the central control room without a single alarm. Inside, high-ranking Council officers monitored fleet movements, unaware of the danger creeping toward them. James gave the signal. The team struck. Gunfire erupted as silenced rounds found their targets. The officers barely had time to react before they were dead or restrained. The last one, an Itheri officer, reached for an alarm, only for Emma to slam him into the console, knocking him unconscious. Cole's voice came through the comms. "We're in position. You ready?" James activated the command console. Time to shut them down. He accessed the planetary defense grid. Missiles, energy barriers, automated turrets, all under the Council's control. Until now. With a few keystrokes, James overrode the system. Across the planet, shields flickered and fell. Gun platforms powered down. The Council's mighty fortress was suddenly defenseless. James activated the comms. "All ships, attack." Outside, the void lit up. The rebellion fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. Council warships scrambled, caught off guard. Vaskar Prime, once untouchable, was now vulnerable. James turned to Emma. Time to go. But before they could move, a cold, familiar voice echoed through the station speakers. "James Carter." He froze. Emma's eyes narrowed. "No way." The voice continued. "You really thought you could take everything from us." It was Chancellor Valen. James clenched his fists. "I was hoping to." Valen's tone was calm, almost amused. "You have no idea what you've just done." The station trembled. Emergency alarms blared. Then, through the viewport, James saw something that made his blood run cold. A new fleet was arriving. Not Council ships, something else. Emma whispered, "What the hell is that?" James didn't answer. He just knew one thing. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. The viewport filled with darkness as the new fleet emerged from the void. Their ships were unlike anything James had ever seen. Black, jagged, almost organic. They moved with an eerie precision, faster than any Council warship. Emma stared. "What are those?" Cole's voice crackled over comms. "We've got a problem. Those ships, they aren't broadcasting any Council signals. There's something else." Then, Chancellor Valen spoke again through the station speakers, his voice calm but filled with something worse than anger. Satisfaction. "You were so eager to bring down the Council, Carter, but you never asked yourself who was holding back the real monsters." James felt his stomach drop. "No." Valen's voice remained steady. "We weren't ruling the galaxy. We were protecting it. From them. And now, thanks to you, there's nothing stopping them from taking everything asterisk." The alien fleet opened fire. The Retribution and the Rebellion ships had no time to react before a barrage of energy blasts ripped through space. Entire ships exploded in seconds. The fleet that had come to destroy the Council was suddenly fighting for survival. James turned to Emma. "We need to get out of here. Now." She was already moving. Agreed. The station shuddered as enemy forces boarded it. Alarms screamed, red lights flashing everywhere. James and his team raced toward the docking bay, weapons drawn. Cole's voice came through. "Carter, the Retribution is taking heavy fire. We need you back on board." "We're coming." James fired at an alien soldier that lunged at them. The creature was fast, too fast, but Emma's blade sliced through its throat before it could strike. They reached the shuttle, launching just as the station began to break apart. Behind them, Council officers and rebels alike were being slaughtered. Whatever these creatures were, they didn't care who they killed. As the shuttle sped toward the Retribution, James opened the comms. "All ships, fall back. Regroup at the nearest safe point. We can't fight this." Cole responded, "We're barely holding together, Cap." His voice cut out. James' chest tightened. "Cole. Cole." The shuttle docked, and James ran onto the bridge. The Retribution was battered but still operational. Cole stood at the console, blood running down his face. "We lost half the fleet. The Council's gone. The Rebellion's broken. It's just us now." James stared at the carnage outside. The alien fleet wasn't stopping. They were consuming. Emma stood beside him. We wanted to destroy the Council. Now, we might have doomed the whole galaxy. James clenched his fists. Not yet. Cole frowned. We don't have the numbers, Carter. We barely survived that fight. James turned to him. His eyes burned with determination. Then we find a way. We stop the Council. Now, we stop them. Emma smirked. You always were bad at giving up. James looked at the wreckage of the battle. The ships burning, the galaxy on the brink of a new war. They had destroyed an empire. Now, they had to save the galaxy.